The Lord said to Joshua, "Do not be afraid, do not be discouraged. Take the whole army with you and go up and attack Ai. For I have delivered into your hands the king of Ai, his people, his city, and his land. You shall do to Ai and its king as you did to Jericho and its king, except that you may carry off the plunder and livestock for yourselves. Set an ambush behind the city." Joshua and the whole army marched out to attack Ai. He chose 30,000 of his best fighting men and sent them out at night with these orders. Listen carefully. You are to set an ambush behind the city. Don't go very far from it. All of you will be on the alert. I and all those with me will advance on the city. And when the men come out against us, as they did before, we will flee from them. They will chase us until we have lured them away from the city, for they will say, "They are running away from us as they did before." So when we flee from them, you are to rise up from ambush and take the city. The Lord your God will give it into your hand. When you have taken the city, set it on fire. Do what the Lord has commanded. See to it. You have my orders. Then Joshua sent them off, and they went to the place of ambush and lay in wait between Ai and Bethel, which was roughly 2 miles to the northwest. Early the next morning, Joshua mustered his army, and he and the leaders of Israel marched before them to Ai. The entire force that was with him marched up and approached the city. They set up camp north of Ai, and the soldiers took up their positions, with the main camp to the north of the city and the ambush to the west of it. That night, Joshua went into the valley. When the king of Ai heard of this, he and all the men of the city hurried out early in the morning to meet Israel in battle. Joshua and all Israel let themselves be driven back before them, and they fled towards the wilderness. All the men of Ai were called out to pursue them, and they were lured away from the city. Not a man remained in Ai or Bethel who didn't go after Israel. The Lord said to Joshua, "Hold out toward Ai the javelin that is in your hand, for into your hand I will deliver the city." Joshua held out the javelin towards the city. As soon as he did this, the men in the ambush rose quickly from their positions and rushed forward. They entered the city and captured it and set it on fire. The men of Ai looked back and saw the smoke of the city rising up into the sky. The Israelites who had been fleeing to the wilderness turned back against their pursuers. Those in the ambush came out of the city against them, so the men of Ai were caught in the middle, with Israelites on both sides. Israel cut them down, leaving no survivors or fugitives, except for their king. The king of Ai was brought to Joshua. Joshua impaled the body of the king to a pole and left it there until evening. At sunset, Joshua ordered them to take the body from the pole and throw it down at the entrance of the city gate. All the people of Ai fell that day, 12,000 in all. Israel carried off for themselves the livestock and plunder of the city, as the Lord had instructed. Now when all the kings west of the Jordan heard about these things, they came together to wage war against Joshua and Israel. However, the people of Gibeon a city southwest of Ai, resorted to a ruse. They went as a delegation whose donkeys were loaded with worn-out sacks and old wineskins cracked and mended. They put worn and patched sandals on their feet and wore old clothes. All the bread of their food supply was dry and moldy. They went to Joshua at the camp in Gilgal and said, "We have come from a distant country. Make a treaty with us." The Israelites were skeptical. "But perhaps you live near us, so how can we make a treaty with you?" "We are your servants," they said to Joshua. Joshua asked, "Who are you and where did you come from?" They answered, "Your servants have come from a very distant country because of the fame of the Lord your God, for we have heard reports of him, all that he did in Egypt and all he did to the 2 kings of the Amorites." The elders and all those living in our country said, "Take provisions for your journey. Go and meet and say to them, 'We are your servants. Make a peace treaty with us.' This bread of ours was warm when we packed it at home, but now see how dry and moldy it is. And these wineskins that we filled were new, but see how cracked they are now. And our clothes and sandals are worn out by the very long journey." The Israelites sampled their provisions, but did not consult the Lord. Joshua made a peace treaty with them and let them live, and the leaders of the assembly ratified it by oath. 3 days later, the Israelites learned that they were neighbors and set out for Gibeon, arriving 3 days later. But the Israelites didn't attack. The leaders of Israel said, "We have given them our oath by the Lord, the God of Israel, and we cannot touch them now. Let them live, but let them be woodcutters and water carriers in service of the whole assembly." Joshua said to the people of Gibeon, "Why did you deceive us? You are now under a curse. You will never be released from woodcutters and water carriers for the house of my God." They replied, "Your servants were clearly told how the Lord your God had commanded his servant Moses to give you the whole land and to wipe out all its inhabitants from before you. So we feared for our lives because of you, and that is why we did this. We are now in your hands. Do whatever seems good and right to you." The people of Gibeon became woodcutters and water carriers for the assembly, and provided for the needs of the altar of the Lord at the place where the Lord would choose.